And welcome back to part 3. If you've missed part 1, we were talking about drum processing and mixing. If you missed part 2, we were talking about mixing cymbals and overheads. Check those out in the links above. Let's get into this video where we're going to be talking about drum bussing, sampling and master bus processing. Let's get into it. So on my channel here, I'm going through all of these. Let's do this quickly and combine them all. So I've pre-programmed this to go to bus 32. And if we click on that, then we pull up some plugins I've got on the bus channel. All right, so we've got our kick, snare and hi-hats soloed here on our drum group. Let's take off the processing. Let's hear it without the drum group. With. So straight away, there's a summing effect where the effect of the channels individually and them getting fed to the bus is adding to the volume. So straight away, we're kind of solving our volume issue here. What have I done to the drum bus? I've added an EQ. Bit of low end here to give some punch to the kick drum. I've taken away a couple of annoying frequencies. Let's hear how that sounds with and without. Bit more thump and just tidying up a couple of things there. I've then put an SSL channel strip on, obviously, but this is a bus compressor. Again, I've gone for a template and I've found this West Master Bus compressor, which is a gentle 2:1 ratio, adding a little bit of volume, and that's how this makes the drums sound. So straight away you can hear it's kind of bringing the drums together into a group, making them sound quite cohesive. And I've just added a little bit of reverb to give it some thickness. Nice. I've done the same thing for the cymbals. I've put them on a bus. Let's hear how that sounds. So cymbals on their own. With the group. Now you'll notice the cymbal group level is quite a bit lower than the drum group because I wanted more of a summing effect with the drum group to add more volume. I don't want to add more volume with the cymbal group, but I want to control the sound a little bit. So I'm going to select them all again. Turn on the send to the bus. Now this dial here, you can individually attenuate how much of that you're sending to the bus to get processed by whatever channel processing you put on the bus. Usually I put them all to 0 and then just go from there and tweak things as and when I need to. So how does that sound with the bus? I've just put a gentle compression on again. So how are the drums sounding now? I think that sounds huge. Let's hear how that processing sounds so far in the mix, because after all, that's the most important thing. It doesn't really matter how they sound on their own, as long as it sits in well with the track. Okay, that's pretty good. There's two things missing. One, we need some more reverb on the snare drum. That's got to come forward more. And I'm going to dive in here with a couple of drum samples. Drummers can be purists and would much rather not use samples because they think they can get the best drum sound. The reality is it is very difficult to get a good snare drum sound. So I have gone for my default snare drum sample here, which is actually the sample sound that I used in the demo version of this project when I was writing this song. And that on its own, without any processing, sounds like this. It's a generic digital sample sounding snare drum. Bit of EQ to colour the sound a bit. To thicken it up and add some top end and some reverb. I think I went quite hard on this reverb. Ah. Yep, so I've EQ'd that just to colour the reverb a bit better, but that's adding a thick sound to it as well. Let's hear how that sounds with the other snare drums. So that's starting to sound girthy, that's starting to sound big. And in the mix, much more like a snare drum. Not quite happy with that. I've added in a second snare drum sample, which on its own sounds like this. That's pretty weak and lame on its own. However, with some EQ and SSL magic, quite fuzzy, a bit white noise-esque to add some sharpness. I have added a bit of distortion on this as well. And blended together, those 4 sounds now sound like this. That is a beefy snare drum sound. We like that. Final thing would be reverb. Again, I've used a bus for this. So this is my bus channel here. Top snare drum then, bus 37. I've added a Valhalla reverb. Let's see how that sounds on its own. So that's really adding some long decay and a bit of colour to it. Again, with reverb, you've got to be careful with the EQ of them because they can colour the snare drum sound. So I have evidently gone in and EQ'd this reverb as well. Just to get rid of those honky frequencies. Nice. So are we there? Are we there? How is this sounding in the mix in its entirety? Drums on their own. That sounds huge. And in the mix. So the final step to drum mixing is being aware of what is going to go on your master bus output. I've got a whole bunch of plugins I used here, partly because I've self-mastered this as a bit of an experiment. But let's hear how they affect the drum sound that we've got so far. Without the master bus processing. Yeah. With. So there's not loads going on there. There's a bit of saturation going on there. There was a drop in volume because I have some limiting going on, because for social media mastering you need to be careful with how loud you bounce the track before you send it to Spotify, etc. There'll be another video on that coming up. And the finished track sounds like this. Excellent, I'm happy with that. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you've learned some tips and tricks for EQing, gating, compression. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. There's potentially plenty more videos to come on this stuff because it's such a broad subject. So please tell me what you'd like to know. If you found this useful, please hit that like button. Smash the dislike button if you don't, that's okay. Please subscribe if you want to know more about home studio production. That's what this channel's about. Join me on this journey as we write and create music together, and I will see you soon.